As the moment of truth approaches for the interim lightweight title at UFC 324, a fascinating and deeply human contradiction lies at the heart of Paddy Pimblett's mindset, revealing the complex duality that often exists in fighters who are both fierce competitors and genuine students of the sport's violent artistry. On one hand, Pimblett stands poised to play the role of executioner, the man who could definitively close the book on one of the most electrifying careers in modern MMA history. He acknowledges this potential outcome with a stark, unflinching confidence that borders on relish, telling TMZ point blank, I'm sorry that I'm going to be the one to retire you." He even savors the narrative shock value, noting that just 5 years ago, the idea of Paddy Pimblett retiring Justin Gaethje would have been met with universal dismissal, a fact that underscores the staggering trajectory of his own rise and the seismic shift he intends to complete this Saturday night. Yet, in the very next breath, the brash baddie persona gives way to the sincere fight fan, a man who has spent years on the couch, like so many others, marveling at the chaos Gaethje manufactures. He offers an earnest plea, stating, "I hope he doesn't retire. I love watching Justin Gaethje fight. Justin Gaethje's one of my favorite fighters to watch." This isn't mere posturing or canned respect. It carries the weight of authentic appreciation for a warrior whose balls-to-the-wall style has defined an era of lightweight violence. Pimblett doesn't just want Gaethje to stick around for ceremonial purposes. He has a specific and personally amusing vision for his future, watching Gaethje unleash his patented brand of punishment on Pimblett's own bitter rival, Dan Hooker. The thought of Gaethje punching Dan Hooker's head in is one he finds hilarious, a desired piece of poetic justice that depends on Gaethje fighting on. Thus, Pimblett enters the octagon carrying two distinct parallel hopes. The first is the ambition of a contender to dismantle a legend, claim the gold, and cement his own place by ending the other man's journey. The second is the desire of an enthusiast to preserve a beloved force of nature, to keep the highlight reel spinning for at least a little while longer, preferably in a direction that aligns with his own personal vendettas. It is a rare moment where the cold calculus of career advancement collides with a warmer, almost nostalgic fandom, illustrating that even in the midst of a deeply personal and high-stakes conflict, there can exist a profound admiration for the very fire you were tasked with extinguishing. Whether Pimblett becomes the full stop at the end of Gaethje's story or merely a dramatic comma, his sentiment ensures that this clash is as much about legacy as it is about a title, framed by the respect of one fighter who hopes, in a strange way, that his victory doesn't mean having to say a final goodbye. For Sean O'Malley, this weekend's clash at UFC 324 is far more than a simple return to action or a step back into the contender pool. It is the foundational move in a grand, final campaign to seize a version of superstardom that has, in his own estimation, thus far eluded him. Stepping into the amended co-main event slot against the dangerous 5th-ranked Song Yadong, a fight elevated after the injury withdrawal of Kayla Harrison, O'Malley carries the perspective of a former champion who views his past reign not as a peak, but as a plateau. In a revealing moment on the UFC 324 Embedded series, he dissected his own trajectory with striking candor, admitting, "The Sugar Show hasn't peaked yet. I wanted to be the biggest UFC superstar at one point, and I never really was that. I was always up there, top 2, top 3. I was never the one." This confession is the engine of his current hunger. It reframes his entire motivation. This fight against Yadong isn't just about winning, but about unlocking the dormant potential he still fiercely believes resides within him. It is the necessary, perilous first step on what he sees as the final path to become the sugar that I wanted to become before it was all said and done. Every flashy strike, every calculated feint against Yadong will be in service of this larger resurrection project, an attempt to reignite the mainstream buzz and undeniable momentum that can catapult him back to the transcendent status he covets. And O'Malley's vision extends far beyond the walls of the T-Mobile Arena this Saturday. He is already mapping a course to the most historic stage of the year, publicly sketching a blockbuster scenario for the UFC's White House event, a grudge match against former champion Petr Yan. He labels it the biggest bantamweight fight in history, a claim rooted in their shared history and combustible styles. It's a savvy call-out that bypasses the current champion, targeting a marquee name and a redemptive narrative, as O'Malley holds a prior win over Yan. But this glittering future is conditional, locked behind the formidable gatekeeper that is Song Yadong. O'Malley himself acknowledges the binary stakes. I gotta go out there and get through Song, and if I don't, it's pointless on who's next. Therefore, his performance this weekend is a dual-purpose mission, a practical battle to defeat a top-5 opponent, and a symbolic audition to prove that the Sugar Show's most spectacular, superstar-making season is still to come, with the hallowed lawn of the White House waiting as the ultimate set for its next episode. In the relentless, ever-shifting landscape of the UFC, where fight cards are living organisms susceptible to last-minute mutations, the heavyweight division has produced a compelling and volatile late switch as the formidable Brazilian powerhouse Jailton Almeida has stepped up on less than 3 weeks' notice to face the dangerous Russian Rizvan Kuniev at UFC Vegas 113 on February 7th. This is the kind of short-notice gamble that defines careers and reshapes divisional trajectories, with Almeida agreeing to fill the void left by Ryan Spann, who departed the card for undisclosed reasons, throwing himself into a high-risk encounter that could either reignite his momentum or deliver a second consecutive setback. For Almeida, this is a critical opportunity to wash away the bitter taste of his recent split decision loss to Alexander Volkov this past October, a result that interrupted a dominant 2-fight finishing streak over heavyweights like Alexander Romanov and Sergey Spivak. A victory here, especially an emphatic one, would instantly reassert him as a fearsome presence in the upper tier of the division, a grappling terror with fight-ending power who refuses to let a single loss define him. However, standing across from him is no easy out. Kuniev, who earned his UFC contract with a knockout on Dana White's Contender Series, has proven his durability and skill in a hard-fought split decision loss to the perennial contender Curtis Blaydes in his promotional debut. He is a massive, powerful fighter who will present a stark stylistic challenge and a genuine threat to anyone, particularly an opponent who has had limited time to prepare for his specific strengths. The entire Meta Apex card in Las Vegas, headlined by a bantamweight clash between Vinicius Oliveira and Marcio Bautista, gains a jolt of unpredictable heavyweight energy with this new matchup. It's a classic UFC scenario. One man's misfortune becomes another's opportunity and a third's sudden challenge. Almeida, by accepting this fight, is betting on his own elite skill and athleticism to overcome the disadvantage of a truncated camp. Kuniev, finally securing a stable opponent after multiple postponed debuts, gets a chance to claim the biggest scalp of his career and announce his arrival in earnest. When the cage door closes, it will be a collision of necessity versus readiness, of momentum versus redemption, in a division where one punch can alter everything, and where a fighter like Jailton Almeida is willing to risk it all on short notice to ensure his name stays etched among the most dangerous men on the planet. The long-simmering, deeply personal feud between UFC CEO Dana White and polarizing boxing star Jake Paul, a conflict built on years of public trolling, scathing business critiques, and deeply personal insults, reached a new peak of palpable, awkward tension during a chance encounter at the College Football Playoff National Championship game in Miami. This was not a planned promotional face-off, but a spontaneous collision of two massive egos in a crowded suite, with the added surreal layer of US President Donald Trump positioned literally between them, a fittingly larger-than-life buffer for a rivalry that is often played out on a stage of similar scale. The moment was charged with the immediate context of White's recent vicious mockery of Paul's devastating knockout loss to Anthony Joshua, a defeat White said should leave everyone involved embarrassed, and which followed months of White lambasting Paul and his warlock manager for their litigious tendencies. As the video circulated, the body language spoke volumes, a stiff, fleeting acknowledgement that barely qualified as an interaction, the air thick with mutual disdain that no handshake or casual small talk could possibly penetrate. Here were two men who have built brands on confrontation, suddenly forced into a civilian proximity that only heightened the animosity. For White, this was the busiest of men on the eve of his own company's return at UFC 324, taking in a football game only to be confronted by his most persistent and irritating critic. For Paul, still licking his wounds from the most high-profile loss of his boxing career, this was running directly into the executive who had just publicly danced on his professional grave. The encounter served as a perfect, silent capsule of their entire relationship, a cold, awkward stalemate. It underscored that the bad blood is far from ceremonial. It is genuine, personal, and resilient enough to survive even a shared social setting. With Paul now teasing an indefinite break from fighting to plot his next move, and White steering the UFC into its new Paramount era, their paths may diverge professionally, but this brief, wordless clash in Miami proved that the tension remains a constant, ready to ignite whenever their orbits unwillingly collide. The feud, it seems, is permanently awkward, forever personal, and always just one chance encounter away from reminding the world that some rivalries never cool down. They just occasionally have to share a sweet. The UFC 324 fight card in Las Vegas features a pivotal and technically intricate clash in the women's flyweight division that carries the unmistakable gravity of a title eliminator as the surging, undefeated force of Natalia Silva prepares to collide with the seasoned championship pedigree of former two-time strawweight queen Rose Namajunas. This is a matchup defined by stark stylistic contrasts and compelling career trajectories, where the cold, analytical narrative from oddsmakers and sharp bettors paints a clear picture of expectation, framing Silva not just as a favorite, but as a dominant force expected to control the terms of engagement from the opening bell. The betting market's movement is itself a story of escalating conviction. Opening as a modest favorite around -150, Silva's line has been steamrolled by professional money, catapulting into the formidable range of -400 to -450, with Namajunas relegated to a +300 underdog. This dramatic shift underscores a consensus belief that Silva's physical tools, relentless pace, and strategic evolution present an overwhelming puzzle for the veteran. Further dissecting the method of victory props reinforces this outlook, with Silva by decision sitting around +150, indicating that the smart money anticipates a victory built on accumulation and control rather than a singular dramatic finish. This aligns perfectly with Silva's recent ascent. Against elite foes like Jessica Andrade and Alexa Grasso, she has authored masterclasses in measured dominance, leveraging a blistering output of nearly 5 significant strikes per minute, expert distance management with long-range kicks, fluid stance switches, and stifling takedown defense to secure clear unanimous decisions. Namajunas, of course, is no mere stepping stone. She carries the profound experience of a former champion who has navigated the deepest waters at 115 pounds, with legendary wins over the likes of Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Wei Li etched into her legacy. Her move to flyweight has revealed a fighter who relies on exquisite boxing technique, elusive footwork, and opportunistic grappling, but one who has also shown vulnerability to the division's elite athleticism and pressure, going the distance in all 5 of her bouts at 125 pounds. The challenge before the Thug Rose is monumental. She must execute a near-flawless tactical performance, somehow stifling Silva's torrential output while finding openings for her own precise counters or a fight-altering takedown. The prevailing narrative, however, as cemented by the betting landscape, suggests that Silva's physical advantages in relentless high-volume attack will prove too much to overcome over 15 minutes. This sets the stage for a high-stakes duel, where Silva aims to validate her hype and claim her shot at gold through systematic, overwhelming precision, while Namajunas seeks to summon the championship magic of her past to author a stunning, legacy-defining upset against the division's most formidable new force. The swirling, self-generating rumor mill surrounding Conor McGregor's long-awaited return to the octagon has hit another firm and dismissive wall in the form of Dana White's signature brand of brash indifference, as the UFC CEO has effectively poured cold water on the latest speculation that the Notorious would face Jorge Masvidal at the historic White House event this June. In the vacuum created when White scoffed at the long-dangling Michael Chandler matchup as being old news, the combat sports ecosystem, hungry for a blockbuster narrative, immediately pivoted to another tantalizing name with built-in history, Jorge Masvidal, the inaugural BMF champion who has teased a comeback and shares a past of bad blood with McGregor. Yet when asked directly about this fresh wave of rumors, White responded not with a confirmation or a denial, but with a wave of outright dismissal, labeling the entire conversation as goofy shit that exists entirely outside his sphere of attention. White's comments to TMZ painted a picture of a man deliberately insulated from the very chatter that fuels his own promotion's hype cycle, claiming that such speculation never even reaches his algorithm, a metaphor for his curated reality, where almost everything you see on the internet about our sport is wrong. He professed an almost total ignorance of the McGregor-Masvidal buzz, reinforcing his position as the ultimate decider, unfazed by and unattuned to the public's fantasy matchmaking. This stance creates a fascinating disconnect. While McGregor himself is actively posting training footage and positioning for a spot on the White House card, and while Masvidal is coyly hinting at negotiations, the man who controls the board acts as if the entire conversation is background noise from another room. The practical timeline White outlined adds a layer of concrete anticipation to the fog of rumors. He revealed that serious matchmaking for the landmark card will begin in earnest after UFC 324 concludes this Saturday, with the goal of having the entire card dialed in by the second week of February. This means the swirling questions have a definitive expiration date. White has now, whether intentionally or not, publicly nixed two of the most discussed options for McGregor's return. First, Chandler, now Masvidal, without explicitly naming an alternative. This leaves McGregor's desired comeback, already delayed for years by injury and circumstance, hovering in a state of purposeful ambiguity. The message is clear. While fans and fighters alike engage in a noisy public debate about possibilities, the real decisions are being made away from the goofy shit, and the only algorithm that matters is the one being calculated behind closed doors at UFC headquarters, with the final product for the White House lawn set to be unveiled on Dana White's schedule, and his alone. The deep and profoundly personal rivalry between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, a trilogy woven from triumph, brutal vengeance, and a broken leg, is a saga that many believed had finally cooled into a tense, passive silence, the embers of hatred banked by time and retirement. The arc of their conflict is the stuff of UFC legend. A swift featherweight coronation for McGregor in 2014, a stunning reversal of fortune for Poirier in 2021 that evened the score, and a final, ugly chapter later that year where pre-fight vitriol, including attacks on Poirier's family, gave way to a gruesome injury and a definitive end to the competitive saga. In the years since, with McGregor sidelined and Poirier riding off into retirement after his epic war with Max Holloway, a fragile, surface-level civility seemed to emerge, punctuated by McGregor even offering congratulations on the birth of Poirier's child, a gesture that hinted at a grudging peace, or perhaps just the exhaustion of a feud that had burned too hot for too long. But any notion that the bad blood had been purified by time or life's milestones was violently dispelled with two blunt, unforgiving words from Poirier in a recent interview. When asked by Ariel Helwani about that very congratulatory message in the state of their relationship, Poirier's response was immediate, visceral, and left no room for interpretation. "Fuck Conor." The sentiment hung in the air, heavy and absolute. A follow-up question yielded only a silent, disdainful shake of his head, a non-verbal confirmation that the wounds inflicted, particularly the personal attacks leading to their third fight, remain raw and unhealed. This wasn't the heat of promotional hype. This was the cold, settled contempt of a man who has closed the competitive chapter, but has explicitly refused to close the personal one. For McGregor, who surely dreams of a narrative-correcting fourth act to reclaim the final word, this declaration from Poirier serves as a tantalizing yet seemingly unattainable provocation. The opportunity appears to have vanished with Poirier's retirement, locking their story in a state of permanent, acrimonious suspension. Poirier walks away with the final victory in their series, and now, with this candid moment, the final word in their feud, carrying the legacy of their battles and the weight of his unflinching resentment beyond the confines of the octagon. The rivalry, it seems, is over in every sense but the emotional one, forever frozen in a state where one man has moved on from fighting, but has pointedly chosen not to move on from the fight. The narrative surrounding Justin Gaethje as he approaches his interim lightweight title showdown with Paddy Pimblett is one of profound evolution, a journey from a pure, unrefined agent of chaos into a tempered, strategic force of violence, all while holding fast to the core identity that made him a legend. For nearly a decade under the UFC banner, Gaethje has been synonymous with a balls-to-the-wall style, a fighter whose very nickname, the Highlight, was a promise of carnage fulfilled through a non-stop offensive attack that served as his only necessary defense. He built a career and a fan base on this beautiful, reckless abandon, living by the code of being the most exciting fighter on the planet, a man who willingly threw himself into the fire to create moments etched in the memory of anyone who paid for a ticket. But as famed coach Trevor Whitman reveals, a pivotal shift occurred when Gaethje's purpose transformed from simply creating spectacles to embarking on a calculated title run. This required a fundamental recalibration. Whitman helped Gaethje temper that innate, wild aggression with layers of savvy, intelligence, and sharpened technique. The fighter who once sought only to overwhelm now learned to dismantle, mastering the art of systematically taking an opponent's legs away while picking his moments of explosive entry with more precision. Yet, crucially, the essence was never lost. As Whitman notes, Gaethje's purpose today is a dual mandate. I'm going to be a champion, but I'm going to make sure if someone pays for an event, they're going to remember my fight. It is the synthesis of the old savage in the new strategist, a fighter who has walked the roller coaster of the fight world and emerged with his family in his corner and a more dangerous, complete version of himself in the cage. Now, standing on what he calls his last hurrah, Gaethje acknowledges this journey. He recognizes that his willingness to take chances, to embrace the chaos, is what originally set him apart, and he hints that the classic Highlight might make a glorious final appearance. He carries the experience of having captured interim gold before and the bitter lesson of falling short of the undisputed crown against Khabib Nurmagomedov. All of it, the evolution, the past glory, the past heartbreak, converges in this main event against the surging Pimblett. This is more than just another fight. It is Gaethje's tempered, intelligent, yet still deeply violent manifesto for one last run at the ultimate prize, a promise that his final chapters will be written with both the cunning of a champion and the unforgettable fire-seeking spirit of the highlight reel king he has always been. The typically serene and outwardly unflappable demeanor of Max Holloway, a fighter who has built a legendary career on a foundation of relentless action inside the cage and almost preternatural calm outside of it, has been punctuated by a rare and strikingly direct bolt of public frustration, aimed not at a rival contender, but at the media machinery that so often shapes the narratives surrounding the sport. This eruption centers on the symbolic BMF title, a belt Holloway has fought with profound heart to legitimize, and the recent recycling of old critiques about its prestige. When journalist Ariel Helwani presented comments from inaugural BMF champion Jorge Masvidal, in which Masvidal questioned Holloway's past laughingstock description of the belt and confidently stated he would have beaten Holloway in a stylistic clash, it triggered a response from the reigning champion that bypassed Masvidal entirely and landed with full force on the messenger. Holloway's retort was swift, personal, and cutting in its simplicity. On social media, he tagged Helwani directly, writing, "I meant people was saying it was a laughing stock, and one of them people was you at Ariel Helwani. Stop trying to start shit. You're 43 years old, dude." This wasn't just a fighter clarifying a quote, it was a deliberate and pointed deconstruction of the media process itself. Holloway effectively reframed the entire conversation, highlighting the irony that the very journalist now facilitating a debate about the belt's past legitimacy was himself a past contributor to that same skeptical chorus. The dismissive jab about Helwani's age added a layer of personal exasperation, painting the endeavor as tired, cynical, and beneath the station of a veteran reporter. The subtext here is rich with the tensions of a champion in the heart of a demanding fight camp. With a crucial BMF title defense against the ever-dangerous Charles Oliveira looming at UFC 326, a fight that represents another monumental chapter in Holloway's storied career, this public spat is a clear declaration of where he wants the focus to lie. He is not interested in relitigating the prehistory of a title. He is already sanctified with perhaps the greatest last-second knockout in UFC history against Justin Gaethje, followed by a dominant defense in Dustin Poirier's retirement fight. By calling out Helwani, Holloway is asserting control over his own narrative, rejecting what he sees as a manufactured and recycled controversy designed to generate clicks rather than respect the sport's current reality. It's a reminder that beneath the blessed humility and endless respect for opponents exists a fiercely competitive and intelligent mind that guards his legacy jealously, one that views idle, media-driven chatter about a belt he has bled for as a distracting noise he is now willing to bluntly silence on his march back to the octagon. The devastating news that swept through the fight world last week, confirming that the monumental co-main event clash between bantamweight champion Kayla Harrison and the returning legend Amanda Nunes was off due to a severe injury, has now been fleshed out with chilling details that underscore just how perilously close the sport's athletes skate to the edge of permanent physical catastrophe. The initial image of a tearful Harrison in a hospital bed, her neck immobilized in a brace, was a stark, uncomfortable reminder of the fragility underlying all the spectacle. Now, her manager, Ali Abdelaziz, has revealed the frightening reality behind that photo. This was no acute training mishap, but the culmination of a neck issue Harrison had been silently battling for years, which escalated to a point where she could no longer lift her arm. Despite injections and anti-inflammatories, nothing worked, leading UFC doctors to deliver an ultimatum with grave finality. Immediate surgery was mandatory to avoid the risk of paralysis. This context transforms the cancellation from a mere scheduling setback into a sobering narrative of survival. Abdelaziz's report that Harrison's pain vanished immediately after the procedure is a small mercy in a scary situation, a testament to modern medicine in the UFC's rapid intervention, which he credits with facilitating the best possible care. The champion's decision to undergo the surgery is framed not as a choice, but as the only responsible path, the best decision she's made, prioritizing long-term health and mobility over the immediate glory of a superfight. Yet even from a hospital bed, the relentless engine of the fight calendar continues to turn, with the historic White House event in June looming as the next monumental target. Abdelaziz strikes a tone of ambitious, almost defiant optimism, stating nothing's impossible for a woman of Harrison's drive and discipline, and shockingly suggesting she would compete at 70 to 80% if necessary to make that iconic card, a claim that highlights the fierce, often concerning mentality of elite competitors, even in the face of serious medical protocols. The landscape is now painfully altered. Nunes, her comeback paused, remains in Las Vegas training, a queen without an immediate challenger. Fans are left to redirect their anticipation toward other compelling fights on the UFC 324 slate, while the division holds its breath. The dream of Harrison versus Nunes is deferred, replaced by a more urgent hope for the champion's full and healthy recovery. Her journey back will be a test of patience against ambition, with the glittering prospect of the White House lawn serving as a powerful, perhaps dangerously motivating beacon on the horizon. The entire episode is a jarring pause in the Harrison era, a reminder that the most formidable force any champion faces is sometimes the silent, creeping weakness within their own body.